The idea, insight, or secret you need for massive impact is just moments away. It's time to claim your career crown. The podcast where business owners and entrepreneurs share the keys to the kingdom to help you open the vault to your greater success. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today we're joined by our very special guest, Stacy Braiuca. And today we're going to be talking about why appointments with yourself are vital and how to get started. Making time for yourself is often a challenge, and today you're going to learn why it's so important and how to give yourself the gift of me time. And if you get a ton of value in this episode, I would love to invite you to subscribe because it costs nothing to subscribe. Now, I want to tell you about Stacy. She's known as the Squirrel Wrangler. Stacy guides humans to wrangle their inner squirrels so they can live in peace and joy. Stacy, I am very excited to have you here and to have this conversation today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lynn. I am super excited to be on your show. We've followed each other around here and there and have lots of mutual friends, and I can't believe it took us this long.
But we got here.
We did. We're here.
And Stacy, I'd love to get started because, what inspired you to become a squirrel wrangler?
There's a long story behind the Squirrel Wrangler. It involves Jay Facette, my hair being blue, and me having squirrel puppets on the screen when I was teaching people about how to use technology to increase their productivity. Because my secret mission is that people do that so that they have more time for this and for self-care. And so I took the squirrels and threw them one day, and he started teasing me about squirrels and blue hair. And a friend of mine and I, Paula, and I were talking one day, and I'm like, I got to weave this in somewhere. What am I, a squirrel, whatever? We had a couple different preliminary ones, and I ended up Squirrel Wrangler. But then I realized that all I have done in my career in multiple ways is helping people wrangle their squirrels, whether it was technology, productivity, or things like anxiety and mental wellness. So
that's amazing. I love the background and that story. And it's such a visual, and it makes sense that we're always wrangling squirrels in our lives.
Yeah.
And I want to get right into the topic because this is really an important topic for so many of us, especially women. But what do you mean when you say we need appointments with ourselves?
So appointments with yourselves are just as, if not more important than your appointments on your calendar with your clients, with your doctor, with your family. We need to make sure that we literally write in pen or permanently into our Google Calendar, whatever it is, appointments that we have with ourselves. If you don't have downtime, your unconscious mind does not have time. Your squirrels don't have time to play. Because really, wrangling the squirrels doesn't include just throwing them out. Wrangling the squirrels is putting them in their little cages so they're there when you're ready for them. And they hold our creativity and our joy and our curiosity. And if you don't let them out to play once in a while, then they die in their little cages. And then basically you do too, in a way. And so you've got to have those. You've got to have that those moments of, oh my gosh, I could do this with my business. Or, wait a minute, I really kind of like having a week off a year and I need to be able to plan for that. I'm telling the tale, especially as a female-owned entrepreneur, solopreneur. There are lots of things, but even if you're in a 9 to 5, it's just as if not more important because you're on someone else's timetable. But to have the boundaries and hold up and advocate for yourself to take care of yourself so that you can be the most productive for that company, whether it's yours or somebody else's.
Yeah. Well, it's very true. I mean, I immediately started thinking, well, hey, I actually put my Pokemon Community Day in my calendar. It's an event in my calendar to play.
Good
Right?
for you.
There are even squirrels in the game, but they're not called that. But yeah. And the same thing with vacation time. And
Mhm.
I just actually did that for a 2-week holiday. And it was like I was so excited to be gone and did only a little bit of work that was absolutely necessary. But most days I absolutely did no work.
Yeah.
I had a couple things come up right after on the Friday I'd already left.
Yeah.
On Monday. Isn't that the way of the world? But, when you're talking about this and creating these appointments, I mean, I know that I have sort of a system, but how do you do this? And what's that process? And how do you encourage the people that you work with to create that?
Mhm. I actually developed a self-care cadence, what I call a cadence, and it involves creating a self-care menu. So if you picture a menu, you have your appetizers and your entrees and your desserts and your drinks and you know, all the things, right? So if you picture a self-care cadence and menu, the cadence involves the minimum that we need of self-care to plug into our lives. And I'll explain implementation of it later because you don't want to implement all at once. But that's all I'll say now. The cadence is 5 minutes once an hour, 30 minutes once a day, 2 hours once a week, 1 day once a month, and 1 week once a year. I love that you had 2 weeks that you did. I love that you have your Pokemon Day because those automatically fit into part of that cadence, right? And like I said, those are the minimums.
Yeah. No, I mean, I take several of those vacations a year. So,
Uh huh. But the other part of the year, you probably, if you're like other entrepreneurs I know, we will willingly sometimes put in a 16-hour nose to the grindstone day because our squirrels are out to play. We're excited and we're creating and we're in the zone,
yeah.
right? So, but if you didn't have those 2 weeks, your squirrels might not be there for you to play during that 16-hour creation day.
Yeah. No,
You know,
I hear you. I will have to say that I'm not there anymore, so I don't do that anymore. But I still, when I have those creative flows, I will work longer hours, or I'll show up on the weekend and do something.
yeah.
And that's always great. And everyone is at a different point. And I think that this idea of making appointments with ourselves is a challenge for many. And at the same time, I also feel not only is it a challenge, I'd like you to talk about why that's a challenge,
Mhm.
but there's a flip side. I actually feel that for your well-being, your overall well-being, it's more urgent than ever.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
there's that two sides. Can you speak to both of those things?
Sure. So, um, and just to wrap a little bit on the menu part, because I talked about the cadence, but not the menu, I realized, is the menu is you create menus for each of those things. Because your 5 minute might include meditation or a walk or playing a computer game or um to even
Snuggling my cat.
snuggle. Oh, that's a good one. Snuggling your animals. That's an amazing one. So your 5 minute ones are little short things, but you want lots of them and you want the menu in front of you because you might look up and go, well, I've got my 5 minutes, but I really don't feel like meditating right now. Or the cat's in the other room and they're not going to play with me. It's just not happening to Tina today. So whatever it is, you want a long menu of 5 minute items, a long menu of 30 minute items. Some of them may cross over, long menus of your 1 day items and your 2 hour items. And by the way, Self-care is not taking the dog for a walk because the dog has to pee. You have to there's a fine line. There's a very fine line between taking the dog for a walk because the dog has to pee and taking the Lynn for a walk because she's got to get out and stretch and have self-care. Big difference, right? Now, can you task layer and have both? Yes, but you got to be real careful you don't slip over that line, right? Self-care is not going shopping with your sister because your sister wants a new shirt. It's going shopping with your sister and getting pedicures because you enjoy the thing together and you enjoy it. So the key to self-care is the joy for yourself. And that's also one of the reasons we need it, especially given, and I'll say world events. There's a heaviness. There's been a heaviness since COVID in the world for lots of different things that we've gone through economically, politically, socially, you name it. We've been through the ringer in lots of ways. And that took a lot out of people. And we pushed through a lot of times, even without the time for self-care or the time for any kind of even health or wellness in general, or mental wellness. And so in a way, we're paying our deficit back to our own self-care. Self-care and sleep are not things you can necessarily bank up and then use up later. And it's not that easy. It's not like the checking account in that way. But I'll say that we're paying it back simply because we didn't do it and we did push through really, really hard stuff. Right? So even though it's not exactly equatable. But the hard part is we're also socialized that we need to have this work ethic. And believe me, I come from a family of very strong Scottish immigrants, just a generation or so back. And that work ethic thing is a very strong value in our family and a thing to do. You get your homework done before you go play. You get your work done before you go play. You make sure your work's all done before you go on vacation. You do a little bit of work on one day on vacation, and you know what, you absolutely have to, if you have to, when you're on vacation, if you have to. Right? But you also, I think the difference happened when they came across the pond is that in Europe, they still hold the high value of taking holiday and taking time off. And when many of our ancestors here in the United States, and probably our cousins in Canada, when they came over, that work ethic changed to having to work hard from 9 to 5, having to do overtime, having to, whatever your employer needed, working 2 jobs, working 3 jobs, working during the day, and then working for at home, and not having time for holiday or taking care of ourselves or our families. In not care in the sense of taking care of them as getting the things done your kids need, but spending time with them to play with them, or spending time with your siblings or time with your parents. That part got cut out. And I think it's important because we need to reclaim it for our own overall well-being. Right? Just looking at public health statistics of heart disease, cancer, lots of preventable health concerns, suicide, depression. I worked in public health for 10 years. I have a degree in public health. I don't know if that usually it doesn't always come out. I have a degree in public health and one in social work. And the stats are there. It shows how serious preventable health issues are.
Yes.
And there are 4 S's that are underneath all of our health issues: sleep, self-care, stress management, and societal stigmas. We've got to get enough. We've got to manage our sleep. We've got to get enough self-care. We've got to deal with stress management, and we've got to deal with how we treat each other, basically.
Yeah.
If we manage those 4 things differently, all of those public health stats on cancer, heart disease, suicide, mental health, all of those would go down. Every one of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I I know that for my own personal self, I mean, that is all of those ring very true. And it's it's a huge change from when I was in my corporate career to now, right? And so I had a bunch of those S's that I don't have anymore.
Well, and it is interesting is there's a difference. There's a 9 to 5 set of stressors, but then there's also the, oh, you've got healthcare, you might have healthcare and you might have vacation time, you might have sick time. But there's in that situation, there's also kind of a little more push to not use it. It's you have the resources, but no, you don't have time to use that because we really need you at work. We really need you here that day, you know? And I think that also carries over in some regards to our um when we're entrepreneurs, it also carries over because we're like, well, we can do that, later. We can work that in later. We've really got to push. We've got to get this done. And we don't realize the damage we're doing to ourselves and our ability to do things like get on a call that we might have to be on or to be at our best when I know that your specialty and I love, and it is not mine, is being in sales. Your specialty being sales. If you're not at your best mentally, emotionally, and whatever when you get on that call, that energy comes through to the person on the other end. And you may or may not make that sale just because of your energy.
Yeah, there's a certain absolutely there's a certain truth to that. There's a whole bunch of things that mentally that go on with sales, to your point.
Yeah.
And it's although I will say in my corporate career that certainly didn't hold me back, but there were those extra stress things that were going on. So and there's different stresses as an entrepreneur. And so I really like this conversation because I do think to a certain point, this is about our right to choose, and we have the right to choose to give ourselves these appointments in our life. And a lot of times people feel that, well, they don't have a choice, but in truth, you always have the choice to make a change, to do something differently, right? And so what's curious is what have you found in your experiences? What's holding people back from recognizing that they do, in fact, have the power to make a new choice, to give themselves time to spend with themselves?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought it up that way because really life is about change, choices, and consequences. And we learn that at a young age. And sometimes that learning actually holds us back in a way because the other thing we learn is fear of what we see as a potential consequence. And what I mean by that is when you are looking at the choice to take time off as an entrepreneur, the fear of the consequence might be, I will lose money. And then I will lose my business. And then I have to go back to corporate. And that's an absolute huge fear for us, those of us who have escaped, right? But I think whether it's a big thing like that or whether it's a small thing, I think fear is probably the biggest barrier to change of any kind. And to make a change where you're giving something to yourself instead of giving to others, because that it goes back to the work ethic. It goes back as women. It goes back to our societal expectation of us being the caregivers, and that internalized expectation of ourselves as the caregivers, not only for our for our families, for our extended families, for whatever. Some of us are in professions of caregiving. And we come last. And the truth is, just like when you get in an airplane and they say, put your own mask on first, if you don't do that, you may die and so might your child next to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really is the exact same thing when it comes to self-care. If you don't take care of you, I actually literally had last week a client had a major health happen and ended up in the hospital in ICU.
Yeah.
If they, I'm sorry, that one, it really upset me that the client was that way. It upset me because I also know I know that their kids and their family need them. And if they aren't taking care of themselves, then the possibility would have been there that they would have it's lucky they didn't pass away.
Yeah.
And it was that serious. And it has to do really with, if you do not take the time to care for yourself, it doesn't matter how many digits you have that you call your age, or my new one is, I'm Stacy version 5.6. Good to meet you. No longer, I was 55 and then I changed to 5.6. So just like software levels up, I'm now like software, I'm 5.6. Doesn't matter what your numbers are, because you could be 16, 18, 25, 56, 82. It really doesn't matter. If you don't take care of yourself to the best of your ability, you are not going to be there to enjoy, bond with, enjoy time with. And that's what we're on this planet for, is joy.
Yeah.
And if you don't have time to have any joy, then why be here? And so it's a choice, it's a consequence. Fear is the biggest thing holding most people back, because there's fear of something. I'm going to not get something done that I'm supposed to if I take the time for myself.
Yeah. That's really so true. And it's about looking at fear in the eye and being like, okay, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'm really processing that and going through that.
Yeah.
I know that you mentioned, of course, I'm in sales. And one of the things in sales that I always look at is like, nobody on their deathbed says, gosh, if only I'd closed that other deal, Oh, God. It just doesn't happen. And so that really helps you put things in perspective, you know? And so that's why, like, even with the show, we rotate, because we talk about sales, every 3 episodes, but we're also talking about work, and because part of work, and we're talking about life, because if you don't, it's about a life well lived. It's not about closing one more deal. And so that's one of the things that I find really fascinating about this. And so, for people who are here and they're listening and they're going like, this makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't even know where to get started. How, why, how, I'm not, what should listeners do next about making a date with themselves?
Yeah. Well, start with, so like when I was talking about implementing, you would think, let's start with that 5 minutes a day. But actually, I encourage people not to start with the 5 minutes a day. Start with either the once a day, or 5 minutes once an hour, rather. Don't start with that. It's too hard to implement first. You want to start with low-hanging fruit. You want to start with which one is the easiest to implement first. And generally that ends up being either once a day, the half hour once a day, or the 2 hours once a week, depending on your personal situation. That's usually the easiest one to implement. And you want to implement it just like if you do the daily, it takes 21 days to build a habit. So I encourage people, find one thing, make your list of your 30 minutes once a day, a list of anything that you would want to do. Read a book, play Pokemon, do digital art on your iPad, go for a walk, go listen to live music, listen to an audiobook, cuddle up with your dog, cat, husband, wife, best friend, whatever, right?
Yes.
Make your list of those things and keep the list going. Keep the list on your phone or somewhere you can get to it easily. Sticky note next to your computer, whatever works for you. Keep that list and start implementing it once a day. Don't get mad at yourself if you don't get it done one day. It's like, okay, tomorrow's the next day. Implement it then. Put it in your calendar if you are a calendar person. And even if you're not, try to put it in your calendar as a repeating appointment.
Yeah.
The problem there is, do not have it come up and go, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. No, It's one of those things, kind of like learning how to implement walking on a treadmill if you're not an exercise person.
Yeah.
In February, I had a heart incident, ended up having a surgery, and decided that maybe the not doing the treadmill thing that I hadn't done in ever, maybe I should try that thing again. And I made it 91 days before a different health issue got in my way. I made a 91-day sprint, and prior to that day, I had not done more than 2 days in a row ever, and those 2 days in a point were about 6 months to years apart. I did 91 days.
That's great.
Now, I did that by putting it on the calendar and by saying, I can do 10 minutes. I can give myself, just like the 30 minutes a day of self-care, I can do this. I can handle it for 10 minutes. And if for some reason I got to 8 and I didn't, I would still count that as good.
Yeah.
You also, because the other thing that I did was I created a strategy that allowed me to remember to do it. So I would put my shoes on the treadmill every night when I went to bed, and I would put my laptop on the treadmill. So I could not get on my laptop and do anything until I had stepped on the treadmill to get the laptop or to do the 10 minutes. So I built it on purpose. I built a strategy to make myself do the thing. And after about somewhere between 15 and 20 days, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what we do in the morning.
Yeah.
And so just like if you have a morning routine, we just talked about.
Yeah.
Just like anybody that you have a morning routine, maybe you build your self-care into that. Maybe that is part of your morning routine.
It is.
For bedtime. Sometimes some of us are like, for me, it's my bedtime routine. In the morning, I get up and I got to just go. In the evening, though, leave me alone. I've got my things that I do, right? And I think it depends on whether you're a morning person, an evening person. Maybe you're a lunchtime person. Maybe you need that thing in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
But put it on the calendar. Build a strategy around it. Make yourself do it. Now, if you've got that barrier of anxiety, though, that's a whole different thing. Because you've got to get rid of, there's 4 things people have to do to change. Get rid of barriers, negative beliefs, and baggage. Create a goal. Take action on the goal. And maintain focus. So some of those we just talked about. But you've got to get rid of the baggage. You've got to get rid of the barrier or the baggage or the negative belief first. And so if you've got anxiety in the way, you've got to get rid of it first before you can create the goal of, I want to do 90 days on the treadmill. And you got to do that before you take the action of how am I going to do it? And then maintaining the focus. So you have to do those in order for them to work. And then the 4 things it takes to change. So to make any change, you have to do 4 things. You have to get rid of the negative beliefs, baggage, or negative emotions. Make a plan, a strategy, take action, and maintain focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's brilliant. And I really appreciate that, Stacy. And also going in about what to do about getting rid of that fear and baggage, or, where to start with that. So, is there anything you wish I'd asked you today that I haven't?
Oh, well, I know that we could talk on and on. So that's a given. I don't know if there's anything that you individually, like, what's your next step in your self-care plan after listening to this?
Well, I haven't really. I'm really glad about the things that I do. So I do have a little morning routine, and I almost resent it when I don't get to do that. But I also can let it go and do something different during the day. And I loved everything about the show. So Stacy, it's just sort of like, for me, you're sort of singing to the choir here because I'm already
True. But what I love about your the way you do it, and I think it's maybe a valuable lesson in itself to the audience, is I love the fact that you have boundaries around your self-care and around your morning routine and say, nope, this is what my thing is. Because one of the important things is keeping boundaries around your self-care routine. That's why it's an appointment with yourself in your calendar, and that you hold it.
Yeah.
But that you also have flexibility with it and go, hey, I'm on vacation. I need to do this thing. I'm going to give myself the time back. I'm going to pay it back. I'm also not going to I'm only going to use what I absolutely have to have. I have to do this 15-minute thing. And then I'm going to give myself that 15 minutes back. 2 weeks from now, when I'm back home, I'm going to take an extra 15-minute break one day, and I'm going to pay myself back, or maybe pay it forward before you go,
Yeah.
A lot of us do that way.
Oh, yeah. I always plan everything ahead, so that when I am on that time, and I have to admit that when the things came up on a Friday, I'd already left, etc. I really resented it. It was like,
yeah,
it's like,
it's not everything to keep this from happening.
But this is what I have to do Monday morning. I'm just going to have to do this. So at least we're on in a lovely spot, and with my laptop that I brought, and did my work, took it back up to the room, and then we were done.
That brings up the fact that you found the joy in the thing, because that's important also. I think finding the joy in the thing, because if you don't do that, you're also putting negativity out into the universe and back into yourself if you truly resent it and get upset.
Yeah. No, I was out in a beautiful setting at a restaurant, and I just, after I had eaten, I just sort of did my thing, but I had a beautiful setting. Then I was able to, but to your point, I think that's it. Everything you've talked about is really important for our own overall health, not just physical, but our emotional health. They really go hand in hand. So, Stacy, thank you so much for sharing why appointments with yourself are vital and how to get started. I know that our listeners are going to want to know more about you and how they can find you and connect with you.
Well, one of the things is I encourage people to break up with their anxiety. Break up with your anxiety. And so if you want to, you can book a free anxiety consulting session with me, where actually I can help guide you to bust up, like if you've got a little bit of a thing that's worrying you that day, I can walk you through busting that up in about 15 minutes.
That sounds amazing.
And it's amazing. It's literally life-changing. And I offer that as a free consultation. So they can find me at stacybraiuca.com/book for that. And I know that you've got the links and everything ready for that. But, get a hold of me. Let's break up with your anxiety.
All right. And absolutely, that link is going to be down in the show notes, along with all of Stacy's contact information, so that you can connect with Stacy. And Stacy, thank you so much. And to everyone who tuned in today, we're so glad that you've made this a part of your day, and hopefully part of your self-care routine, gift for yourself, because this has been such an informative discussion. And Stacy, I just can't thank you enough for doing this today. I'm really glad you were here.
Lynn, I really appreciate having been here too. I'm glad that podcasts and shows like this are really cool for self-care, because it's something you can just let your mind wander, and you can learn things, and you can connect with yourself. I think it's a great piece of self-care.
And thank you. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone. What was your biggest takeaway from this episode? I would love to hear about it. It's important to share the things you love. If you loved this episode, a 5-star review really helps keep the podcast coming to you regularly. Also, if you want to get more sales strategies to grow your business, make sure you subscribe right now. If you want to get results even faster, I invite you to download my sales strategy checklist at petitetoqueen.com/checklist. This has been Lynn Whitbeck, host of Claim Your Career Crown. I'll see you next time.